Hi, I'm Dennis Phillips, and welcome to Everyday Reloading and Shooting. All right, so I'm wanting to do a comparison between the 73 grain ELD match, the 73 grain Berger boat tail target, and the 69 grain Sierra tipped Match King bullets. And so I was looking for a charge weight for the Varget powder that might work well for all of these. And so what I did is I looked back on my results and I found these charge weights. So what I'm going to do is I have loaded these rounds, the 73 grain ELD match, the 69 grain tipped Match King, and the 73 grain boat tail target bullets. I've loaded 20 each of those with 23.5 grains of Varget powder, but we will take these to the range, test these, find out, and get back to you with the results. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back. Once again, we're at the Georgia Gun Club's 100-yard indoor rifle range, and today I'm going to be comparing three different bullets. We'll be shooting the Hornady 73 grain ELD match, the Berger 73 grain boat tail target bullet, and the Sierra Match King tipped bullet. So we'll be shooting a 5-shot fouling group with the 73 grain ELD match. All of these are loaded with Varget powder at 23.5 grains, which has proven to be a good load for me in the past. So we will see how that compares with these three bullets. We will shoot a 10-shot group of the 73 ELD, the 73 Berger boat tail, and the 69 tipped Match King. Then we'll come back and shoot another 10-shot group of each so that we foul the barrel equally for all of these. All right, so as always, you're welcome to enjoy the music while I fast forward through my shooting, or you can skip forward to the results that follow. Shooting at 100 yards. All right, we've got 10 rounds down on each of these, so let's bring it in, take a look and see how the first 10 look on these. All right, I'm going to go ahead and mark this shot because I actually flinched and pulled the trigger before I was properly aimed on that group right there, so I'm going to exclude that shot from my calculations. But this was the fouling group with the ELD match. I believe this top one up here was my first shot, and this bottom one was like my third or fourth shot. And then this is how the 73 grain ELD match group, that seems to be the tightest group so far of all. Then the 73 Berger boat tail target, and then the 69 Sierra tipped Match King. That one is really spread out. But anyway, let's shoot another 10 and then bring them in and see how those look. All right, I think it's obvious which of these performed best, but let's bring them in and take a look. All right, so here we go. You look at the 73 grain ELD match. I don't think there's any question about how it performed. The 69 tipped match king was the most scattered, and the 73 boat tail target bullet by Berger is kind of in the middle of those. I think it's pretty obvious which one performed best, but we want to see by how much better it performed. So we will take these home, measure these by mean radius, and get back to you with the results. Stay tuned. All right, we're back from the range, and we've had the chance to measure and analyze our results. And as mentioned, we're shooting 3 bullets. We're shooting the Hornady 73 grain ELD match, the 73 grain Berger boat tail target, and the 69 grain Sierra tipped match king. And here's a picture of the target as a whole. We shot 20 shots of each of these at target number 1, target number 2, and target number 3. And those were preceded by a 5-shot fouling group just to make sure that the rifle was sighted in. We're using the Hornady ballistics app to measure these groups because when you're shooting large numbers of shots, mean radius is by far a more important measure. As you can see between these two targets, here's your average point of impact represented by the red cross, and here's the average point of impact represented by the white X on the screenshot from the Hornady ballistics app. And so what I've done on each of these, I've marked the average point of impact. And what the Hornady ballistics app does is it measures from that average point of impact to each shot in that group, and it calculates an average of that, and it gives you what it refers to as a mean radius, which I think a mean radius is important because a radius is half of a circle, and if that's your average distance from the center, then your average group size would be 2 times that, which would be 0.70 on this particular group. Now I'm chronographing these, and I'm not shooting groups of 20, 20, and 20. I'm shooting 10, 10, and 10. Then I'm coming back and shooting 10, 10, and 10. So I had to record those. And here's a chart here from where I wrote down those measurements. And what I had to do was I had 2 groups of 10 shots for each bullet, and I had to average those to come up with the average velocity and standard deviation on these. All right, so we started off with the fouling group with the 73 grain ELD match, again also loaded at 23.5 grains of Varget, the same thing that we shot target number 1 with. The fouling group was shooting slightly high and to the left. This is our average point of impact. And then we had a standard deviation of 12 feet per second, an average velocity of 2667. Similarly, this after the barrel had warmed up, the velocity increased from 2667 to 2707, and that's on 20 shots. That's the average for 20 shots. At the 73 grain ELD match, shooting our 20 shots with that load, we had a group size of 1.2 inches, but we had a mean radius of 0.35. And as mentioned, a radius is half of a circle. So if you double that, that gives you an average group size of 0.7 inches, which I think with 20 shots, that is pretty much outstanding. And of course, we had 3 flyers. There's one here, here, and here. And this, of course, is why we measure by mean radius, because if you're only measuring by group size, we have 3 flyers here that are kind of on the outside, but the rest of these 17 out of 20 shots are clustered together right there. You can cover that with your thumbnail. And so you don't want to ignore all of those shots. And so you measure by mean radius, and that gives you a better picture of how your rifle and ammo are performing. And also it gives you some indication of how you as a shooter are performing as well. And there's going to be some natural dispersion just from the barrel, but oftentimes, some outliers like this, that may very well be shooter error because we're all human. But when you get 20 shots at a single target, that's going to tell you something about the rifle, the ammo, and the shooter. And this performed very well at a mean radius of 0.35. Again, an average velocity of 2707 and a standard deviation at 10.6. So very pleased with that. With the 73 grain Berger boat tail target, it opened up a little. We had a group size overall of 1.33 inches. This had a mean radius of 0.48, which, if double, gives you a group size of 0.96, which on 20 shots at 100 yards is not bad to have all of your shots actually averaging under an inch. But we had a total group size of 1.33 on the total spread. There was one shot here where I flinched. I had not aimed the rifle. I was starting to aim and I was putting it in position, but I've got such a light trigger that I accidentally pulled the trigger and fired. And that's this shot right here that I circled. And I did not count that because I know that that's not part of the rifle, shooter, or ammo equation unless you want to factor in shooter clumsiness into the equation, which I'm trying to factor that out. Okay, when we go on to the 69 grain tipped Match King, we've now got a group size of 2.2 inches and a mean radius of 0.66. So that gives you an average group size of what, 1.22, I guess, thereabouts. We also had an average velocity of 2741 and a standard deviation of 13.7. Now, I will say in defense of this 69 tipped Match King bullet, it was 4 grains different in weight than the 73 grains that we were shooting, but the velocity was very similar at 2741, 2707, 2718. So, but it may very well, if you were to shoot this same bullet and powder at a different charge weight, it may very well perform differently. All right, so I think the obvious winner here is the 73 grain Hornady ELD match bullet. What do you think? What's been your experience? Let me know in the comments below and let's have a conversation. All right, those are my results. I hope you find this information helpful. If you have any ideas, thoughts, questions, please leave those in the comments below. I try to interact with everybody that comments. I hope you will also like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.